You're alive. Too bad you will die.
As a child who grew up mostly in the 2000s, I encountered Mortal Kombat way too late into my life, around about the time of the 2011 reboot to be precise, making me around 13 years old, and I can't lie, I was completely shooketh. By this point, the most graphic game I'd ever played was Fallout 3, which is quite gory, but in a more gritty, toned down way, not for the over-top splatterfest that Mortal Kombat 9 was. So of course, like most kids from 2011, I wanted to know more about the series, and one thing I quickly encountered was this. I needed to know where I could find this, and that's when I found the Mortal Kombat movie from 1995, and I loved it. Then I watched its bigger budget 1997 sequel, and I loved it even more, but not for any good reasons. I just enjoy really bad movies for some reason. And with the new reboot film finally coming out this year, I thought it'd be a very good time to look back on every single Mortal Kombat movie, including the animated short film released as a weird marketing thing for the 1995 film, and wait a minute. Did I just say animated short film? Mortal Kombat The Journey Begins is honestly, it's just not very good. It's really bad. Very, very bad. Please God, no, why am I doing this to myself? The film was made very quickly by New Line, Turner Home Video, and Threshold, who we will get on to, do not worry. And it was straight to video and Laserdisc, but no one ever acknowledges Laserdisc. Rest in peace, Laserdisc. It was only really made to help market the original film, giving some character backstories as well as generally trying to flesh out the world prior to the movie's release, but it was just terrible and definitely a sign of things to come from Threshold. The animation for the 3D parts are, well, this.
Shang easily defeated the students of the Temple Master. In the final bout, he met the Temple. But Shang had perfected his own dark skills over men. It was as if he could look into the man that Shang possessed just such a dark magic.
Yeah, this is actually released, and people had to buy this with real money. Whilst the 2D animation is also pretty damn bad, and I'd compare it to 90s Saturday morning cartoons, but I also feel that would kind of be an insult to the people who made 90s Saturday morning cartoon shows. In fact, there's just tons of reused animations, some which happened over and over and over again, to the point where I actually want to bash my head into my keyboard just so I can start writing about this. The voice acting is also weird. Despite saying hardly anything in the final film, Sub-Zero talks a lot in this, which is weird since he has a weird raspy voice in this, but he doesn't in the final movie, and it's just extremely distracting. One of the weirdest things is that the voice actors for Sonya, Liu and Johnny are completely different actors from the final film, despite the fact they could have gotten the actors quite easily for marketing and not paid them much. However, I do need to know that Shang Tsung and Sub-Zero's voice actor was played by Winnie the fucking Pooh, and Sonya Blade is the female shepherd from Mass Effect. So hey ho, at least they got some talent. I'm just pretty sure those talents would like to forget about these moments in their lives. You may also be wondering where this movie fits into the first film. Well, it's a midquel, which, you know what that means? Absolutely nothing. It just takes place during the boat ride to the island, all the way to there, well, honestly, I have absolutely no idea. This film doesn't try at all to fit in to the original film. It's just very useless, as it adds literally nothing, and certain moments literally happening in the film anyway, so what's the point in remaking them for the short film, which no one's going to watch? The only real point of this movie is to add a bunch of exposition that the final film doesn't even use or require, so yeah, also Liu's brother Chan isn't even mentioned once, despite the fact that's his entire character arc in the film, so why is he on this boat in this short film? Who knows? He just is, for the shits and gigs. The only real positive I can give this film is that Baraka sort of appears, even if it's just his race, but hey, I'll take any Baraka I can have, since I never get a story mode. And with Kung Lao also appearing, but this scene does make the Johnny Cage vs Goro fight make no sense, since Liu Kang should have fought Goro, since Goro killed his ancestor, but yeah, sure, whatever, more cameos I guess. And going back to the reused footage thing, the Baraka fight reuses this shot 3 times in a row, which, yep, it feels like I'm watching a Showa-era Godzilla film all over again, but Yeah, also, why does Raiden disappear when the Tara can appear, only to come back after the 5-minute really bad fight scene happens, which is recycled footage? I just don't get it. I also weirdly like the little character bios at the end of the film, however they stay on screen just a few seconds too long. Just like most things in this movie, it feels like they should have cut down more than added on. And also they just completely ignore Kano, Katana and Reptile, which is weird since they were already in the movie by the time this short was made. Honestly, this film is just truly awful and exceptionally boring. If you think listening to my voice for a bunch of minutes is boring, please, go watch the film. Then you will know what boring actually means. The fights are just bad, they're awfully animated, constant narration over the top that explain everything possible like it's season 13/12/11 of Doctor Who, and it almost feels like they tried to make the movie feature length but just ran out of exposition so stopped at the 35-minute mark. Honestly, it would have worked a lot better being just a 10-minute short set on the boat, giving some backstories, but no, we ended up with this 35-minute long garbage, and I can't even recommend it to the fans, as it hardly fits in the film at all, since it removes some scenes from the finished product, adds tons of backstory which were all ignored in the film, and overall, it's just really bad quality. You aren't missing anything by skipping this, but by watching it, you are missing 30 minutes of your life that you'll never get back, just like I did. Luckily though, for my sanity, we do move on to something that I can't wait to talk about and actually makes me feel good about talking about. Mortal Kombat was made in 1995 from producer Larry Kazanov, and please do note his name as we're going to be coming back to him many times during this video. But anyway, one day big old Larry saw Mortal Kombat, and just like everyone who wasn't a Karen in the 1990s, fell completely in love with it. Larry pitched to Midway, who owned Mortal Kombat at the time, a movie, a TV show, an animated TV show, and some other weird ideas.
Let me first of all start by having you introduce yourself and the cast of characters behind you here.
My name is Shang Tsung.
All right. And starting over here.
Sub-Zero to my left. Kano, Scorpion, Sonya Blade, Liu Kang, Baraka, and Cabal.
Tell us a little bit about the show and
Midway ended up agreeing for some goddamn reason, and Larry ended up with the rights to Mortal Kombat for basically everything except the video games, with this movie being the main priority, of course. Future Resident Evil, Alien vs Predator and Monster Hunter, while this man has killed a lot of franchises, Paul I Also Made Event Horizon Anderson, was chosen to direct, despite never making a film even slightly like this before, with future Wing Commander murderer Kevin Droney also chosen to write the script. This movie is honestly somehow one of those rare films which is both good on its own merits and also so bad it's good at the same time. Moments such as Shang Tsung just fully acting is really bad, but in an amazing 1990s cheesy way, to the point where the actor was actually brought back to voice the character for the games, whilst the fights with Johnny and Scorpion, Liu Kang and Reptile, etc. are truly awesome. With the fun fact being that they were actually added during the reshoots after test audiences wanted more fight scenes, which is cool as hell. In fact, most of the fight scenes are cool as hell. In fact, all the fight scenes are great. Sonya vs Kano, Liu Kang vs Sub-Zero, Johnny vs Goro, and of course the final fight against Shang Tsung. However, there are some duller fights such as Liu and Katana, Sub-Zero and some random ninja, Art, because Art is the best character in the movie apparently, versus Goro, and the whole dining room fight, but personally, they're still good, just not as good as some of the other ones. The cast are also great, especially Bridget Wilson's version of Sonya Blade, who definitely influenced the character's much more sarcastic persona in future media. In fact, most of the cast's interpretations of their characters definitely influenced the future games. Lyndon Ashby's arsehole version of Johnny Cage is still in the games to this day despite his new character motivations. Robin Shu's kind but arrogant Liu Kang is still also in the games, even if he is now an undead zombie thing. Trevor Goddard's extremely Australian Kano is that iconic that it's the only way the character's been interpreted since this movie came out. And of course, as I said, Carrie's weird, psychopathic, sociopathic nutjob version of Shang Tsung is that good. They had to bring him back for the games. That doesn't happen often. And of course, Talisa Soto just really bad as Katana because Katana is terrible. Sorry, not sorry. Great moveset. Character is boring as hell. Grow a pair, woman. I also need to state that certain other characters such as Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Shao Kahn and Raiden are completely wasted in the movie, basically forgotten about by the screenwriters at times, and extremely whitewashed. 90s or not, I gotta call that out. Why are all these Asian characters played by white guys? But Sam, you probably aren't asking, we're bored of talking about the fights. What about the plot? Well, one viewer who really needs a life, the plot is mostly focused on Liu, Johnny and Sonya, during the events of the original Mortal Kombat tournament, which began the series with Mortal Kombat 1/2. The tournament is a competition, so to speak, which if lost 10 times will cause a fictional hell dimension of Outworld to take over Earth, or Earthrealm as the film and games call it. This movie in particular adapts parts of the original 2 Mortal Kombat games, as they were all that had been released by that point, and honestly, for a cheesy 90s action movie, based on a weird little fighting game, it does a lot with how little there is to go by, and it's surprisingly decent for, once again, bad 90s movie. Now, don't get me wrong, it's no Schindler's List. Hell, it's not even a Godzilla vs. Kong, but for what there is, it's enough to make you interested and want to know what happens next, and that's probably good enough. The characters are also decent enough for you to care about, even if you haven't played the game, which is quite an achievement for a video game movie after this.
Keep your own guard. In fact, this might be a good time to pray to him.
There's also some amazing sets and beautiful locations in California and Thailand, with the music for the film being truly iconic to the point, even now, it's used by the franchise and still referenced or straight up used in marketing. This is 25 years later, that's impressive. However, I can't lie, there are some massive drawbacks. Apparently Sonya was meant to fight Jade, who is like a secret unplayable character in MK2, and one of my personal favourites, but yet the scene was cut. Possibly due to the fact that Cameron Diaz was originally meant to play as Sonya Blade, but she injured herself during pre-production, meaning that Bridget Wilson was brought in without much fight training, which is kind of a problem when you're doing a martial arts movie. Now, as much as I do love her performance in this film, it really does suck, since Sonya, my main character who I play as every time I play the games, only has one fight in this film, with another cut being a romantic subplot between Liu and Katana, which, weirdly enough, is actually referenced in the sequel, despite not actually happening in this movie, because, you know, Annihilation is a whole nother bag of worms that I'm about to get to, and I really don't want to. Now, finally, we get to the film's giant issues. The weird Goro puppet, the terrible, awful CGI, even at the time, and of course, the lack of gore. This is Goro's fatality in the game. This is Goro's fatality in the movie, and as much as I do love how cheesy and fun this movie is sometimes, I wonder why this was even made without the gore. I mean, come on, it's like making a Resident Evil movie and removing the horror... I mean, like making a Monster Hunter movie without the fantasy... Come on. Oh, got it. Right. Imagine making an Alien vs Predator film, but making it PG-13. Oh, god damn it, Paul, no! Overall, though, the film is great fun, and it's quite successful. It made approximately $125 million on a budget of about 18. That's still impressive to today's standards. And finally, it did break the video game curse with critics, and it didn't get truly awful reviews like Mario Brothers, Double Dragon, which definitely deserved it, and Street Fighter, but in my opinion, it both deserved it and didn't, because that movie is amazingly awful, and I love it. Mostly for this moment.
For I beheld Satan, and he fell from heaven like lightning!
Speaking of amazingly bad, I think you all know what comes next. Mortal Kombat Annihilation was made in 1997, once again with good old Larry producing, but this time Paul, the video game adaptation murderer Anderson, decided not to return. Instead, he opted to make the only film of his I genuinely enjoy unironically with Event Horizon, and screenwriter Kevin Downey also being swapped for Dark Skies creator Bryce Zabel and Brent Friedman. There was additional story writing as well from associate producer Joshua Wexler, who also worked on the first 2 installments, if you count the short film as the first installment, as well as video game series creator John Tobias, and of course, because he couldn't resist, good old Larry also ended up working on the story. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, and from the background footage you can probably tell that this movie is terrible, but in the greatest way possible. The production was ridiculously rushed, being made in a very fast-paced production to the point where we don't even know how quickly it was made. Just to prove how fast-paced it was done, the cinematographer for Mortal Kombat 1, John R. Leonetti, made his directorial debut with this movie. You don't move up from cinematographer to director that quickly on such a high-budget film. It's just a terrible decision. My tutors would freak out of hearing about this. And if you want any hint of his directing quality, he went on to direct the bad Butterfly Effect sequel and the bad first Annabelle movie. Yeah. This movie was not in safe hands. In fact, many dumb decisions went on to ruin this movie, such as a ridiculously expensive shooting locations that spanned Wales, England, Thailand, Jordan, which for a first-time director is not a good idea. Another glaring thing was a returning cast, all 3 of them. And yes, I said 3. Robin Shou returned to play Liu Kang, which was good, but Talisa Soto returned to play Katana, which was bad. Along with former Reptile actor Kevin Cook, who in this movie appears as Sub-Zero 2 for like 5 whole minutes, and yeah, that's it, everyone else was gone. Bridget Wilson turned down Sonya Blade, apparently because she was already agreeing to be in I Know What You Did Last Summer in a supporting role, and ended up being replaced by Sandra Hess from Beastmaster 3? Wait, there's a second film? Lyndon Ashby turned down returning as Johnny because, well, they killed him off in 5 minutes, so yeah, fair enough. And he ended up being replaced by Chris Conrad, who is mostly known for that Amazon show Patriot, which I watched the pilot of like 6 years ago. Then finally, Christopher Lambert no longer playing Raiden because, and I do quote here, "I didn't want to do it because I didn't think the script was very good. I didn't like it. I liked the first one." So he ended up being swapped out for James Remar, who is mostly known for playing Dexter's dad in, well, Dexter. And every other minor character in the first film, such as Jack, Shao Kahn and Scorpion, were also changed, but yeah, now I think it's time to genuinely stop delaying and talk about the film itself. And oh god, I know this clip is used every single time someone talks about this movie, but I just can't resist. And please do keep in mind, this movie apparently cost $30 million.
Mother! You're alive! Too bad you will die.
And honestly, the film's acting does not get much better than that. In fact, just everything about this movie doesn't get much better than that. Even for like more respectable actors like Shou and Ramar, they're just so bad. Most of the characters introduced are killed off before like any non-game fan even knows who they are. Look at this part with Rain. He's on screen for 2 scenes. His name isn't even spoken in the movie, for crying out loud. There's also some weird character retcons, such as Shao Kahn and Raiden now being brothers because the screenwriters were on a lot of coke. And also, despite Raiden being a god and Shao Kahn being a mortal demon, they literally can't be related, and the movie even basically says it without saying it. How is this in the script? Also, like, Shinnok is here, sure, but you know, Shinnok is terrible. He's just really bad. He helped kill the franchise with 4, which is why I had to get soft rebooted with 5. Why? Shinnok sucks. What the hell is he doing here? At least Quan Chi is not here, because if so, wow, this movie would be a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes by this point. With one of the weirdest things being that the script is apparently based off MK3, so why is Shinnok here? But yeah, Mortal Kombat 3 is a great, cool, post-apocalyptic style thing, but why isn't someone like Stryker here? They're mentioned, but not even here, so we don't even know how other people are reacting to this apocalypse. In fact, thinking about it, no actual city attacks are ever shown in this apocalypse movie, just the aftermaths, which ruins the entire point of having Annihilation in the title. It's like we're never even shown any real annihilation. And no, this building explosion doesn't count because there's no building in the shot because the film wasn't finished. Wait a minute, what was that? The film wasn't finished? Well, it explains why the special effects are truly awful, especially for a movie which, once again, for those who didn't hear me, who haven't processed it since I last said it, cost $30 million in 1997. That's $50 million now. Coincidentally, the same amount that the new Mortal Kombat film apparently costs. I would also like to state, I've just watched that new movie Love and Monsters. That apparently cost $30 million. With CGI like this. And no, I'm sorry, CGI improvements or not, this was bad for 1997. This is CGI from a Buffy episode released the same year on about a tenth of the budget. Also, Shiva is the same species as Goro, which makes the differences in how their special effects look even more confusing somehow. Why hasn't she got a cool animatronic? Is she not deserving of it for some reason? The editing is also really bad since, as I mentioned, this film was not finished. It was the test cut. So for people who don't know, the test cut is essentially the version of a movie they make to show test audiences before reshoots and edits of the final version of the film come in. So moments which the audience won't care about, for example more drama-based moments between characters, they're usually removed if it's an action movie, and will be added for the pre-final cut. Which kind of explains why Nightwolf stating that Lou is going to have 3 tests, when there's only 1 test that happens on screen. So yeah, this movie is literally not finished, which also explains the really bad CGI. And also makes me wonder how they spent $30 million. Yeah, this movie is just one of those things you see released in media which failed on every aspect of filmmaking. The characters are awful, the acting's really bad, the tone makes no sense, jumping from really dark moments of apocalypseness to this.
Never give up hope.
Bad camera work, fight scenes, special effects, editing, direction, etc. So I really genuinely have to wonder why I absolutely adore this movie with every aspect of my being. Maybe it's just because Baraka appears, even if it does look like a really bad Halloween mask, or maybe, just maybe, it's because of this bit again.
Too bad, you will die.
But wait, didn't you just insult that scene and basically every single scene in the film, you may be wondering? Yes. Yes, I did. But let's be honest, this film easily crosses the line of so bad it's good, to the point where it's in a different country of so bad it's good. In fact, there's some moments of pure SPIG. I'd say I prefer it to the first movie. Now, obviously, I'm not a complete and utter moron, so I don't prefer it to the first movie, but I just love this giant mess. It's so awful. It ended up killing a franchise for 24 years, and that's definitely some kind of achievement. I mean, for crying out loud, the first movie grossed $125 million, this one grossed $50 on a $30 million budget, nearly double, which, if you also take marketing and cinema cuts into account, this film definitely needed to gross at least 60 to 70 mil. It lost money. But I can't lie, I genuinely love it, and even how much they abused Jade in this movie and made her a giant bitch to Shao Kahn, if I'm ever drunk at home, I couldn't choose a better film. Luckily though, a better film is what I'm covering next. Mortal Kombat Legends: Scorpion's Revenge was an animated DVD movie released in 2020, partly as marketing for the new film coming out very, very soon, and honestly, it's really damn good and much better than the awful animated film we got made for the prior movie. In fact, it's kind of too good to the point I don't get why it didn't get a cinematic release. Scorpion's Revenge was directed by Ethan Spalding, who has directed a lot of famous straight-to-DVD animated films for Warner Brothers. Just to mention a few, it includes Justice League, Throne of Atlantis, Batman Assault on Arkham, 3 Scooby-Doo movies including Scooby-Doo Return to Zombie Island, and many episodes of Avatar The Last Airbender. Yes, that Avatar The Last Airbender. With the film being based on a script by Jeremy Adams, who also wrote for Supernatural, as well as producers Rick Morales and James Krieg, who have both been involved in many of Spalding's projects. So basically, yep, what I'm saying is a group of low-budget, straight-to-DVD guys with no real experience made a better Mortal Kombat movie than a studio with millions and millions of dollars. Which, when you think about it, kind of shows how big-budget Hollywood struggles to understand video games and anything really that isn't an extended universe. And even then, they don't know how to do an extended universe. That wasn't in the script, it was just a revelation. But anyway, apart from production stuff, because honestly, there's not much information on this or many straight-to-DVD movies, it's just mostly about its announcement. MKL Scorpion's Revenge is primarily an adaptation of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, I know, stop me if you've heard this one before, but this time it takes parts of 3 and 4's story, to the point where it helps flesh out some of the characters, especially Scorpion and yes, Quan Chi. In fact, many story elements from this film were already shown during the 1995 Mortal Kombat film, so I felt that if I explored and explained everything, I'd basically just be rehashing the start of this video, so I'll just tell you some of the cool differences instead. The main difference is the opening prologue on the film, which finally shows Hanzo's death, along with his whole family by the Lin Kuei, led by Sub-Zero, which honestly is awesome as hell, since even the games have always struggled to show what actually happened. And also because this film is R-rated/18 rated in the UK, it's all on screen, in graphic Mortal Kombat detail, with Scorpion being resurrected by Quan Chi, something which is revealed in MK4, and Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, we don't talk about that one. Ending with Hanzo counting his old self as dead and taking up the brand new name of Scorpion. Then for a while Mortal Kombat 1995 happens, and yeah, pretty much, but there's also a subplot about Scorpion trying to steal Shinnok. Yes, he's also in this. There's Amulet from MK4, with some of the fights adding to the sexy boy Baraka, as well as Jax, because, you know, black representation, bruh. But yeah, Goro rips his arms off, and yeah, it just fully diverges from the 1995 film when Scorpion and Sub-Zero fight, and if you know the games well enough, you know how that fight ends. And now it's a weird adaptation of Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 4, which is a combination I didn't know I wanted, and surprisingly needed, despite my massive hatred of Mortal Kombat 4. It somehow balances really well, and goddamn, I would actually recommend this film, which is something that I struggle to do with the first three, even if I do love the original two weird 90s movies. And it's shocking how good it is for its budget. From the weird seamless Western animation meets Japanese anime, it's just really cool, and I usually dislike anime because I'm just not a fan of the art style, but here it's got some really great visuals, especially and surprisingly for its well choreographed fight scenes. There are some truly brutal levels of gore for a straight-to-DVD animated film by Warner Brothers, and that just makes me even more excited to see how far they go with the live-action film coming out really damn soon, oh my god! Along with some really great characters who are all very faithful to their video game counterparts, with only a few minor changes in order to keep them fresh, all matched with some great voice actors, some of which had previously portrayed the characters in the games, as well as MK1995's voice actor for Goro returning to the role after a 25-year absence. Honestly, it's great, and slight spoiler, it does end on a giant cliffhanger, which will most likely end up adapting Mortal Kombat 3, as well as bits of 2 and 4, mostly because Shao Kahn is not in this movie that much. Similar to Annihilation, but hopefully, you know, not Annihilation in any conceivable way. I genuinely didn't go into this film expecting much, but mostly due to the people working on it, its budget, and some almost anime style, I'd still definitely recommend it, even to non-Mortal Kombat fans, as it explains everything well enough to understand the lore and the story of the games, and with a decision to focus on one character with Scorpion as the main, it's a good decision, and clearly shows both sides of the Mortal Kombat conflict. But sadly, we don't know the budget this time, but I'd estimate it to be around about $2 million, and it grossed about $3 million in its first week on DVD and Blu-ray sales. And finally, with that out of the way, I feel it's time to go back to good old Larry one last time to basically speak about how he completely destroyed a franchise and how it kinda had to ignore everything he did to bring itself back. Back to 1997, Threshold and Mortal Kombat were in a lot of trouble, and I do mean a lot of trouble. Mortal Kombat 4 released the same year and was met with a resounding meh from fans, mostly for not being as good as the original trilogy, whilst also not being so bad that fans could at least laugh at it. Like, for example, Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, which was also released in 97, damn that's not good, along with Annihilation failing, which is really also not good, as well as the awful animated series Defenders of the Realm being cancelled due to low ratings and, well, yeah, look at it, it's a Saturday morning cartoon featuring characters who like to rip each other's heads off. It just wasn't a good idea, Threshold. Many people wondered what the future of this franchise would be and if they should even care by this point. But due to Threshold's picture deal with Midway being 3 movies, they still had to eventually make a third film. But both parties opted to shelve the project for the time being, allowing Mortal Kombat to attempt to rebuild itself as a brand after a truly disastrous year. Sadly though, this only got worse for both companies, as Threshold, for some God knows for whatever reason, made Mortal Kombat Conquest a truly bad TV show to go along with their truly bad movie, whilst Midway made a interesting Game Boy port of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, which, yeah, there's a lot of videos on this game, and I just cannot be bothered covering it, but let's just say it wasn't ported very well. So essentially the franchise was stuck in a rut, releasing subpar ports and re-releases as well as this. God has truly forsaken us. But, 2001 happened, Larry and his mental company asked fans who they thought would die in a Mortal Kombat 3, which, we didn't even know there was a Mortal Kombat 3, but even so, it had a surprising amount of hype, which was quickly squashed when Mortal Kombat Advanced released. But I did mean that Mortal Kombat Devastation had officially begun production once again, which at least was good, as it was most likely going to be an adaptation of Mortal Kombat 4 and the soon-to-be-released Mortal Kombat 5 Deadly Alliance. However, very little is known about the project, except that in 2005, when the film was ready to begin filming, and I am not joking, Hurricane Katrina destroyed some of the filming locations, and by 2009, despite releasing the PS2 trilogy of Deadly Alliance, Deception and Armageddon, Midway closed down and was bought by Warner, making Threshold's contracts for a third film completely null and void. This led to the greatest statement ever said during a lawsuit, and I genuinely am quoting everything right now. In 1993, Kasanoff visited Midway and its CEO, Neil Castro, with an idea to launch the Mortal Kombat concept into a totally new direction. Specifically, Kasanoff proposed to develop derivative works in various media, such as the original game, including a feature-length motion picture, a television series, and other productions. Midway was initially skeptical, as Kasanoff's idea was revolutionary at the time. Although Mortal Kombat game had tested well in arcades, at that time no one had ever successfully transformed a video game concept into a motion picture and other media. With Midway had no effort to move beyond video games with the Mortal Kombat concept, but Kasanoff was ultimately able to persuade Midway to go along with his vision. The Mortal Kombat franchise as it stands today is far more a creation of Threshold and Kasanoff than of Midway. Midway's creative output was almost entirely limited to the video games. On their own, the video games provided only minimal backstory and mythology, and only flat, stock characters with virtually no character development. Threshold was responsible for transforming each of the pattern or stock characters present in the underlying Mortal Kombat video games from an unprotectable idea into a fully realised, completely delineated, and independently copyrightable expression. Each such character represents a separate, protectable, derivative work for which the copyright is owned by Threshold. Yeah, since 2010, Warner flirted with a Mortal Kombat movie and completely ignored that lawsuit after a fan-made short film MK Rebirth got their attention, leading to 2 seasons of an online kind of show called Mortal Kombat Legacy, which nearly led into the fan, Kevin Turonsky, directing a brand new adaptation. However, the project fell apart very quickly and ended up causing Legacy to not even get its 3rd season, which kinda sucked. Luckily, by 2015, James Wan of Saw and Conjuring fame revived the project as its producer, with the first-time filmmaker Simon McQuaid directing off the first-time writer Greg Russo's script, and I have to admit I am sceptical, but hopefully the film will turn out quite well, and judging by that trailer, it probably will. But what happened to good old Larry, you may not be wondering? Well, I'm just going to link this video to one of my favourite channel's Cynical Reviews on his video on a movie called Food Fight, which this film somehow cost $50 million. And that's all I'm going to say, and if you want to know more about Annihilation's development, I'm going to link another channel I love with Matt McNussle's What Happened on the subject. But yeah, the franchise was in some tough hands is all I'm going to say, but please be sure to keep an eye on the description and comments when I'll be giving my quick thoughts on the brand new movie after it releases. But until then, I thank you all very much for watching, I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you all next month, where, ironically, I'll be talking a lot more about Mr. James Wan and a little indie series you may have heard of called Saw. Do 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 do.
Mortal Kombat!
In just seamless Western animation meets Japanese anime style. I said Japanese.
Yeah.
Like bolognese.
Japanese.